At the height of World War II, as the Japanese Empire began to crumble, a final, desperate plan was supposedly set in motion. The legend goes that General Tomoyuki Yamashita, the infamous Tiger of Malaya, was to oversee an operation of unimaginable scale in the Philippines. The objective, to hide a treasure so vast it could rewrite the economies of nations. Gold bullion, priceless icons, and artifacts stolen from a dozen conquered countries were to be buried deep within the archipelago. They say these vaults, scattered across more than 170 alleged locations, are guarded by a deadly combination of ingenious booby traps, complex tunnels, and the very ghosts of the prisoners forced to dig them. For over 80 years, the legend has persisted. Fortune seekers and serious treasure hunters have poured into the Philippines, armed with secret maps, deathbed confessions, and unwavering hope. Some have lost their fortunes, some have lost their lives. But the question that drives them all remains unanswered. Is the lost gold of the Philippines still out there, waiting to be discovered? To understand the sheer scale of this legend, we have to go back to the early days of the war. Japan's expansion across Southeast Asia was swift, brutal, and incredibly profitable. As the Imperial Army stormed through nations, they didn't just conquer land, they systematically plundered it. Now this is where the story gets really interesting. Proponents of the legend claim this wasn't just random looting. They say it was a highly organized, state-sanctioned operation, allegedly codenamed Kin no Yuri, or Golden Lily. The story goes that it was headed by members of the imperial family, with the sole purpose of stripping every ounce of wealth from the occupied territories. Banks, museums, private homes, and ancient temples were emptied. Gold reserves, historical artifacts, religious statuary, and personal jewelry were crated up and shipped to staging points. The sheer size of the loot described in these accounts is staggering, with some estimates claiming it included over 6,000 tons of gold alone, a figure that would be worth hundreds of billions of dollars today. This wealth was meant to fund Japan's war effort indefinitely, and at the heart of the legend that would follow stands General Tomoyuki Yamashita. A formidable military leader, Yamashita was known for his stunningly rapid conquest of British Malaya and Singapore. In the final year of the war, as Allied forces began to push Japan back, Yamashita was given command of the Japanese forces in the Philippines. It was here, in one of the last bastions of the empire, that the fate of this immense treasure was supposedly decided. Yamashita's name would become so inextricably linked with this hoard that history would remember it not by its alleged code name, but simply as Yamashita's gold. By 1944, the tide of the war had turned. The once mighty Japanese Navy was being dismantled by American submarines, its shipping lanes severed. This presented a critical problem. If a vast treasure had been consolidated in the Philippines, it was now trapped. Shipping it back to Japan was a suicide mission. Any ship that valuable would be a priority target destined for the bottom of the Pacific. A new, desperate plan was needed. If the treasure couldn't be moved, it would have to be hidden. Under Yamashita's command, a massive undertaking allegedly began. Across the Philippine archipelago, from the mountains of Luzon to remote jungle valleys, teams supposedly constructed a series of elaborate hiding places. Believers speak of over 170 distinct sites, though this number comes from treasure lore, not historical records. These weren't simple holes in the ground. They were complex underground tunnel systems and deep shafts, dug by thousands of Allied prisoners of war and local laborers. The stories of how the treasure was buried are the stuff of nightmares. Crates of gold bullion, chests of jewels, and priceless artifacts were lowered into these man-made caverns. To protect them, the legend claims Japanese engineers designed a deadly array of booby traps, tunnels rigged with explosives, shafts designed to flood, and vents to release poison gas. The most chilling part of the legend is how the ultimate secrecy was allegedly maintained. The story goes that once a vault was sealed, the soldiers would turn on the very people who built it. Prisoners and laborers who knew the layouts were supposedly executed and buried within the tunnels themselves, becoming the final ghostly guardians of the hoard. In September 1945, Japan surrendered. General Yamashita was captured and in 1946 was tried for war crimes and executed. He never spoke of the treasure. If he was indeed the master architect of this grand concealment, he took the secrets of those alleged 175 tombs with him, leaving behind a tantalizing mystery. For decades after the war, the story of Yamashita's gold was just that, a story, a whisper among veterans and a dream for treasure hunters. But in 1971, one man claimed he found it, and his story would change the legend forever. His name was Rogelio Roxas, a former soldier and humble locksmith. An amateur treasure hunter, Roxas was guided by a map, allegedly from the son of a Japanese soldier, and information from a man claiming to be Yamashita's former interpreter. For 7 months, Roxas and his team dug on state land near Baguio General Hospital. After months of backbreaking labor, they broke into a tunnel system. Inside, they found skeletons in tattered Japanese uniforms and, deeper still, a chamber. According to Roxas, it held stacked crates of gold bars and, most spectacularly, a golden Buddha statue he estimated weighed a metric ton. Knowing he couldn't move it all, Roxas took the golden Buddha, 24 gold bars, and some swords, then resealed the chamber. He even posed for photos with the Buddha. He later claimed that the Buddha's head was removable, revealing a cavity filled with uncut diamonds. But his triumph was short-lived. Word of his find spread to the highest levels of power. In 1971, armed men, allegedly on orders of then-President Ferdinand Marcos, raided Roxas's home, beat him, and confiscated the treasure. Roxas was imprisoned and tortured. A Buddha statue was later presented in court, but Roxas insisted it was a cheap, bronze-plated replica. After Marcos was deposed in 1986, Roxas filed a lawsuit in a Hawaiian court against Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos for theft and human rights abuses. Roxas died in 1993, but his estate continued the fight. In a landmark decision, the court ruled in favor of Roxas's estate. It found that Marcos had unlawfully taken the items from Roxas. While it couldn't award damages for the unopened boxes of gold, as their quantity was unproven, it did award millions for the Buddha and 17 of the gold bars. The verdict was monumental. It was the first time a legal body had acknowledged that a man's claimed treasure was found and then stolen. While the court didn't officially label it Yamashita's gold, for believers, the case was irrefutable proof. The treasure wasn't just a myth, it was real, and someone had already found a piece of it. The incredible story of Rogelio Roxas lends credibility to the idea that something valuable was hidden in the Philippines, but it also raises a disturbing question. If a vault was found in 1971, what else might have been found earlier? This is where the legend morphs into a sprawling conspiracy theory. This theory, most prominently argued by authors Sterling and Peggy Seagrave, proposes a shocking alternative. What if Yamashita's gold was never truly lost? What if it was found, recovered, and then deliberately covered up by the United States? According to the Seagraves, American military intelligence operatives knew about the Golden Lily operation and began secretly excavating the sites soon after the war, allegedly torturing Yamashita's driver for the locations. But instead of declaring the discovery, a more clandestine decision was supposedly made. This was the dawn of the Cold War. The US needed untraceable money to fund covert operations against the spread of communism. Yamashita's gold, the theory argues, became the perfect solution. The recovered loot was allegedly channeled into secret black gold funds used by the CIA to bribe politicians, arm rebels, and influence elections for decades. It's important to state that this is a highly controversial and widely disputed claim, lacking direct evidence and not accepted by mainstream historians. However, if this theory were true, it would recast the entire legend. The treasure isn't a lost fortune waiting for a lucky adventurer. It's a secret political weapon that has been shaping global events from the shadows. It forces us to ask, was it ever really lost at all? Or was its disappearance the greatest intelligence coup in modern history? The stories are intoxicating. A hidden wartime treasure, a dramatic discovery, and a global conspiracy. It's straight out of a movie. But here we have to ground ourselves in reality and listen to the skeptics. Most mainstream historians and archaeologists remain deeply unconvinced that Yamashita's gold, at least on the legendary scale, ever existed. Their skepticism is rooted in a glaring lack of physical evidence. Despite decades of searching, no authenticated Golden Lily vault has ever been officially excavated and documented by credible institutions. The stories rely almost entirely on hearsay and unverified documents. Then there's the logistical argument. Historians like Ricardo Trota Jose of the University of the Philippines question the premise of bringing the treasure to the Philippines in the first place. By 1943, Japan was losing control of the seas. Transporting thousands of tons of gold through waters teeming with American submarines would have been an almost insane risk. As Professor Jose notes, it doesn't make sense to bring in something that valuable here when you know it's going to be lost to the Americans anyway. For these experts, the legend is a potent but misleading mix of wartime rumors and post-war folklore. The reality of the modern treasure hunt is far from glamorous. It's a dangerous and often tragic pursuit. Aspiring hunters have lost their life savings, and in some cases, their lives. In recent years, men have died from suffocation and carbon monoxide poisoning while digging in unventilated shafts. Furthermore, these unregulated digs cause irreparable damage to the environment and legitimate historical sites. For most academics, the trail leads not to a hidden fortune, but to a series of broken dreams and dangerous holes in the ground. So where does that leave us? Is the lost gold of the Philippines still out there? The story of General Yamashita and his hidden treasure exists in a fascinating gray area between history, myth, and conspiracy. On one hand, you have the persistent legend of the Golden Lily operation. You have the court-verified story of Rogelio Roxas, a man who claimed a treasure so magnificent that a president stole it from him. And you have the dark, compelling conspiracy theory that the gold has been secretly shaping our world for decades. On the other hand, you have the stark lack of archaeological proof, the logical arguments from skeptical historians who represent the mainstream academic view, and the tragic tales of treasure hunters who have found only disappointment and danger. Perhaps the scale of the treasure was wildly exaggerated, with a few real smaller deposits ballooning into a myth of unimaginable wealth. Or maybe the largest vaults really were found long ago, their contents absorbed into secret funds, leaving only the most difficult sites for modern hunters to chase. After all these years, Yamashita's gold remains one of the most enduring mysteries of the 20th century. It represents the chaos of war, the secrets nations keep, and the unquenchable human thirst for adventure. The gold itself may or may not be buried under the Philippine soil, but the legend is very much alive. And it continues to ask its tantalizing question, what if? What if there's still one more vault out there, untouched, waiting for someone to finally unlock its secrets? If you find mysteries like this as fascinating as we do, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into history's greatest secrets. And let us know your theory in the comments below. Do you think Yamashita's gold is a myth, a conspiracy, or is a fortune still waiting to be found? Thanks for watching.